It's the second week of work on phase 2 of the roof work, and after taking all of the old roof off last week, this week the focus is on the top of the walls and preparing them for the new ring beam and then the new wooden beams. The weather forecast has been changing daily recently, but if there is any rain, it looks like it won't be too hard and it won't last too long. So I'm hoping the weather won't be too much of a problem and that we'll be able to make good progress before the May Workers' Day bank holiday at the end of the week. The week started with some excellent weather and it was bright and sunny when I arrived to open up. When the team arrived, they quickly got set up to restart their work on the tops of the walls. With Haggy and Miguel clearing stones from the wall nearest the church, down to the level where the ring beam will start. Sam clearing out rubble from last week, and Fodo chipping out the temporary bricks and mortar above the connection point between the two phases of roof work. We then had the first delivery of materials for the week, most of which went to the back wall, where more work will happen in the coming weeks. By the mid-morning break, Fodo had cleared his section of the wall, and Haggy and Miguel had almost finished their clearing work on the end wall. With the guys on their mid-morning break, I thought it'd be useful to explain what we're focusing on at the start of this week, because it's slightly different to the sequence that we followed during phase 1 of the roof work. In phase 1 of the roof work, once we had taken off all of the old roof, the next thing we then did was to level all of the walls where the wooden beams would be resting. And then, once those wall tops were level, we put the wooden beams in place. And after that, we then did the work on creating the ring beam around all of the walls for phase 1. Now in phase 2, it's going to be slightly different, and that's because of the middle wall in that space over there. This middle wall is only about 40 centimeters wide, whereas the majority of the other walls in the house, especially around the exterior, are about 60 or 70 centimeters wide. And for this wall, there will be 2 sets of beams resting upon it. The beams that cover this space and the beams that cover this space. But we do want to have a ring beam in here to bring the structure some strength and holding the ring beam around the edge together. But to do that, there's not really going to be enough space between the beams from both sides. So the solution we're going to follow is to create the ring beam on this wall below the level of the beams, and therefore the focus for now and the priority is to get this ring beam ready, and that will involve putting a ceramic channel across, getting metal in the middle and then filling this up with concrete. And at the same time, preparing along that wall edge and that wall edge, the ring beam for filling up with concrete a little bit later on. So that's why the sequence is slightly different and why the focus at the moment is on this wall in particular and preparing around the edges there. And there will also be a slight difference to the part above this wall, but I'll talk about that later on in the week. With the focus shifting to the middle wall after the break, mortar needed to be mixed and more water was needed. And Sam needed to lift into the house some of the ceramic pieces delivered that morning. Miguel and Haggy double-checked some levels for the wall tops, and then they started the work on the ceramic channel. A few sections of these walls had big patches of slightly more modern mortar, often with more modern bricks behind. And I started work on clearing these out so that the team could give these sections a better looking stone finish. We think the majority of the mortar patches were where old rafters once rested in the wall, and that they were filled in when this part of the house had some roof work done 40 or 50 years ago. Once the ceramic channel was in place along the center of the middle wall, Miguel and Haggy started to rebuild the tops of the walls back up with stones that they had taken out last week wherever possible. And to help the rebuilding work, I started to pick out stones from more of the rubble piles from last week. It was then time for Sam and Photo to start the tidy up for the day. While Miguel and Haggy tidied the mortar joints in the new wall tops. The second day started with another warm and sunny morning, and a fair amount of haze in the air. And before 3 of the team arrived and started working upstairs, I started some more rubble sorting and stone picking. Buen día. Aló, ¿qué tal? Bien. Bienvenido otra vez. With Photo out for the day, Alu was back on site for the first time this year. And while he started work down below, Sam and Miguel were upstairs lifting in steel frames for the ring beam. Haggy then arrived with the truck and some materials that needed unloading. And then the focus for the whole team was getting the metal frames in place. First inside the ceramic channel of the middle wall, and then around the other wall tops. Rex was back on site as I had thought we would be a man short with Photo away, and that we would need mortar lifting up in the morning. But with the mortar work delayed until a delivery of sand, Rex very kindly continued with the rubble sorting and stone picking. With the metal frames in place, Haggy and Miguel returned to stonework on the wall tops, immediately putting to use stones that Rex had just picked out. While Alu and Sam were now supplying stones to Miguel from below. Just as I was finishing my lunch, the next materials delivery started. This time a big batch of sand for all the mortar that will be needed in the coming weeks. The first half was to be dropped at the back for work from there later on. And the second half was for the work area at the entrance. With sand on site, the mortar mixing could restart, and the sand pile at the back now needed tidying and to be further under the scaffolding and against the wall where the dumper truck hadn't been able to get in close enough. After a short break to catch my breath and rehydrate, I was back upstairs to check progress on the wall work. A little later on, I was out to check which of the old beams might be best for something we want to use them for inside. And with the team finishing for the day, I headed out shortly after for a meeting off-site. On day 3, the weather in the morning suggested there might be some rain around at some stage. And not long after I had opened up, the team arrived. And Fodo was back on site and back on mortar mixing duty, which we would need a fair amount of in the day, and therefore more water was needed as well. Upstairs, the team were back rebuilding the wall edges around the ring beam channels. With Alou supplying mortar and stones, and sometimes requiring some help with the lifting in. While following the team's work, I had various emails and messages to deal with for meetings later in the day. And then some preparations for some work involving the truck later on. After the mid-morning break, Haggy and I set off in the truck for an important pickup down the hill, which I will be telling you more about next week. After a couple of trips, we were back on site to unload. And then I was straight into a meeting with the architect. After which I was eventually able to head upstairs and to see the good progress made by Miguel on the wall top rebuilds. For the last part of the workday, Miguel started a new section of wall. Haggy finished up on a section. And Fodo and Alou started the daily clear up. And when the team had left, I eventually had a much later than usual lunch. Before a quick change of clothes, closing up, and heading to an appointment off-site. Day 4 started with a very different look and feel to the rest of the week. and I spent my first few minutes on site trying to capture it on camera. Sam was back on site after a day away, and Miguel and Haggy returned to the wall work, with Haggy focusing on the thin interior brick wall, where some target levels were needing to be rechecked.
La química humana o la transició d'una màquina? Trobaran la seva parella ideal? La gran cita. Anihilació entre òbvies, perquè regressi serà més gran que qualsevol regal.
While working on the brick wall, the team decided some extra strength was required, with Sam helping Miguel get some fast-setting cement into the brick wall's connection with the stone wall at the end. During a break from the wall work watching, I needed to organize a few things on the phone before the team's morning break. Earlier in the week, when I was explaining our plans for the ring beam, I mentioned this wall and the fact that it was a bit different to the others and would require a slightly different solution. And I wanted to talk about it while the team were doing the work on it, like they have been this morning. What I hadn't counted on was the rain arriving just at the moment I wanted to do that chat, or a neighbour in that direction cutting grass with a loud machine. But I'm still going to try and give a quick explanation as to what we're doing here. Or at least I did try until the rain got heavier and the grass cutter got louder, and I waited for a better moment. Unfortunately, that better moment didn't arrive before the team were back at work, so I'm recording this 24 hours later, when you can see there's been quite a lot more work done, but I thought it would still be useful to talk to you about the approach we're taking with this wall here, where rather than having a central wooden beam running across, we want to actually connect the ring beam from that far wall to the ring beam here via a ceramic channel, which needs to be at the right level, and more importantly, it needs to be firmly connected to the wall below it. And to achieve that, Haggy has had to take out a few rows at the top of the bricks and then rebuild it very smoothly with mortar before putting the ceramic channel on top, which he got on with doing after the break, while Miguel worked on the inside edge of the front wall, where, because the top of this wall will not have a stone finish, he was able to rebuild with a combination of new bricks on top of older bricks and tiles. And with Miguel working along his wall quickly, more bricks needed to be lifted in. The end piece for the ceramic channel needed to be cut down to size by Sam. Before Haggy could place it to finish the section. After what felt like 4 very long days, I was in need of a quick rest, so I headed downstairs. Before heading back upstairs, where more rubble was being cleared, and more rubble was being created from the end wall, where we had had a slight change of plan and more stones now needed to be removed. And shortly afterwards, it was the end of the team's work for the week and the start of a well-deserved longer weekend for them. Although I will be back on site the next day on the bank holiday Friday. The main reason I'm back on site when the team are enjoying their bank holiday relates to the rubble on the floor, where in this room it's been cleared up a little bit, but in those 2 rooms there's still a lot of rubble and stones mixed in that I want to tidy up. And when the team are on site and working up above, it's very difficult to be able to move around and to clear stuff out. So I thought I'd take this opportunity while they're away to get things a little bit tidier for the start of next week. One done, on to the next. Two down and one or half to go. And that shovel load is the last bit of work for this week, during which we've made steady progress with our work around the tops of the walls. Haggy and Miguel have done a very good job rebuilding the edges of the walls and creating the channel for the new ring beam. Up here they have finished their preparation for the ring beam on this middle wall, and once we've got the metal frame in the ceramic channel above the brick wall, that'll be ready for the ring beam as well. And then on this end wall, we've got a little bit more work to do, adjusting the level and then rebuilding the edge to create the channel for the ring beam after we had a little bit of a change in our plan, about which I'll tell you more next week. So this week we've made some pretty good progress. We've been very lucky with the rain, and hopefully next week we will be as well, as we look to finish off the ring beam and get ready for the wooden beams to go in place. So please do tune in again next week to see how we get on.